Paige Swanson had the same potential as Sheldon Cooper, so why does her story end at a house party, while his ends with a Nobel Prize? By the end of Young Sheldon, she's drinking, chasing the wrong people, and barely resembles the girl we first met. And the show treats all of it like it doesn't really matter. But if you actually follow her story from start to finish, the reason it falls apart isn't what you'd expect. It has nothing to do with how smart she was. It has nothing to do with how hard she worked. It comes down to something completely outside her control. When Paige first shows up, she's one of the only people who can actually keep up with Sheldon, and the way she interacts with him feels different straight away, like she's been waiting for someone worth competing against. And Sheldon doesn't know what to do with her. He spent his whole childhood being the smartest person in every room. Nobody pushes back, nobody keeps up. Paige does both. But here's what makes her different from him, and this matters later. Sheldon treats competition like it's war. Paige treats it like it's fun. She's relaxed where he's intense. She reads people instantly. She knows how to fit in without ever making herself seem less smart. And this is where it gets interesting. She has everything Sheldon has, plus all the stuff he never developed. At this point in the show, her family is still together. Things are stable, and you can feel it in how she carries herself. She's confident without being anxious, which is rare for a kid under that kind of pressure. That confidence is real, and it doesn't last. There's a moment where Paige is alone with Sheldon and she tells him she thinks her parents are going to get divorced. No drama around it, no breakdown. She just says it quietly, like she's already been sitting with it long enough that saying it out loud isn't the difficult part anymore. And that moment only makes sense if you understand what's been building underneath it. Her parents aren't having big fights in front of her. It's quieter than that. The tension at dinner, the distance, the way two people stop moving like a unit. The kind of things most kids miss, but Paige doesn't. Both of her parents also end up talking to George about their marriage, not to each other, to him. Two separate conversations, same problem, neither of them aware the other is doing it, and over time she pieces it together anyway. So when she says it to Sheldon, she's not guessing. She's naming something she's already understood on her own. Sheldon doesn't really know how to respond. He's not built for that kind of emotional weight, so it just sits there. And underneath all of it is something she can't fully articulate yet, but she feels it. She's been the gifted kid, the achievement, the thing her parents were proud of. And if that wasn't enough to hold everything together, what was she actually for? She doesn't have an answer. Just the feeling, sitting there, with nowhere to go. But this is where things start to change in a way she can't come back from. The next time we see Paige after she tells Sheldon she thinks her parents are getting divorced, something about her is already different. It's subtle at first. A change in how she shows up, the way she's dressing, the way she carries herself. Small shifts that don't fully make sense on their own, but together feel like something is already cracked. She's quieter, less present, like she's there but not fully locked into anything around her anymore. And then, by the end of the episode, she ends up alone with Sheldon. That's when it comes out. She doesn't build up to it, she just starts talking. About living in two separate houses. About how nothing feels like it's going back to normal, even though everyone keeps acting like it will. And at one point, she just says it plainly. She feels alone, not for attention. Just the first time it's actually come out after sitting there too long. Sheldon responds the only way he knows how. Something logical, something structured, something meant to fix it. It doesn't reach her. Because Paige isn't asking for a solution. She already knows there isn't one. She's just saying it to someone who's supposed to understand her. He doesn't. After that, things don't reset. In her next appearance, the shift becomes harder to ignore. She starts pushing against things she used to accept without question, changing how she presents herself, acting out in ways she never used to. At one point, she's caught with cigarettes. Sheldon asks why she'd want to smoke. She says it's to look older, like she's trying to step outside the version of herself everyone still expects her to be. And when Sheldon suggests she might be blaming herself for what happened with her parents, she snaps and hits him. Not because she doesn't understand what he's saying, but because she does. And that's exactly why it lands too close. And this is where it stops being subtle. You can actually see it now. By the time Paige is a teenager, Sheldon finds her at a college party. She's drinking, telling people she's older than she is, fitting into a space she was never supposed to be in, more easily than she ever fit into the world she was actually built for. And the show moves past it like it doesn't really change anything. But it's not nothing, because not long after, when Missy decides to run away from home, she calls Paige, and Paige says yes. No hesitation, no overthinking, just yes. And during the drive, they start talking about changing their names, starting over, becoming someone else entirely. Paige says she'd go with Ginger. Not a name anyone would connect to being exceptional, just a name that doesn't come with expectations, and at some point she says she'd rather just have a normal job, nothing academic. Nothing that puts her back into the version of herself she used to be, which sounds small. Until you remember who she was. This was someone who used to walk into rooms and immediately be the smartest person in them, who treated being exceptional like it was just the baseline. She's not just drifting from it, she's trying to replace it with something that doesn't ask anything from her. Not because she can't, because she doesn't see the point. When the thing you were told made you special couldn't hold your family together, there are only two ways to read that. Either you were never as special as everyone said, or being special just doesn't matter. You stopped trying to be what you were, and the show filmed every step of that, scene by scene, and then put it in the background and kept moving. That's the last time we ever see Paige Swanson. A college party, drinking, trying to be someone else. That's the image the show leaves you with, and then she's just gone. No final conversation, no moment where someone acknowledges what happened to her, no closing line from the version of her that started all of this, the girl who walked into that first class like she owned it, just that image, and then nothing. And here's what makes that nothing feel like something. Paige Swanson is never mentioned in The Big Bang Theory. Not once. 12 seasons, hundreds of episodes. Adult Sheldon reflecting on his childhood, the people who shaped him, the moments that mattered. The one person who actually matched him never comes up. Not her name. Not even a passing reference. And that stands out, because Paige isn't someone you'd expect to just disappear. She's the only kid who ever genuinely challenged him, the only peer he had. If anyone from his childhood was going to be remembered, it should have been her. People have tried to explain it. The most generous reading is that she just faded out of his life when he left for college. That she was a chapter he closed and never reopened. And that happens. That's real. People who mattered drift away. But that explanation only works if what we watched was a friendship ending. What we actually watched was someone falling apart. And there are people who've sat with that silence long enough to say what most won't finish. That for a kid on Paige's trajectory, with no support system, no one catching her, the drinking, the running, the need to become someone else entirely, the silence in The Big Bang Theory isn't an oversight. It might just be the only answer the show ever gives. To be clear, that's not confirmed. We don't know what happened to Paige. The show never tells us. But here's what is true. The show introduced her, filmed her falling apart, step by step, scene by scene, and then stopped following her completely. No resolution, no acknowledgement, just silence. Which is exactly what happens to her inside the story. She starts struggling, and people stop seeing it. She pulls away, and no one follows. Until there's nothing left to point to. The show did to Paige what everyone in her life did to Paige. It moved on. So what is Paige Swanson's story, really? Is she a cautionary tale? A minor character who was never meant to carry this much weight? A gifted kid who couldn't handle the pressure? No. Paige Swanson is what happens when a kid is handed every expectation and none of the support. When the people around her leave and she's left holding a version of herself that was always for them, never really for her. She didn't fail. She was failed. And the show never once said it out loud. Because here's what Young Sheldon actually spent 7 seasons showing us. A family that stays, chaotic, flawed, suffocating at times, but there, every single day. Present enough to hold one extraordinary kid in place while he becomes who he was always going to become. Sheldon had that. Paige didn't. And unlike Sheldon, the same sensitivity that made her exceptional meant she felt every crack in her foundation in a way he never did. She was better equipped for the real world than he was, and the real world broke her anyway. Sheldon Cooper got 7 seasons and a Nobel Prize. Paige Swanson got 9 episodes and a Red Cup. And the show that spent years carefully documenting what it takes to protect a gifted child watched Paige fall apart and look the other way. If you watched this show and saw Paige differently, or you think there is a part of her story I got wrong, drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. There's no version of this where I think I have the only view. And if this is the kind of thing you're here for, let me know what other characters you want me to cover and I'll get to them next.